was 23 for the quarter, so that's positive. However, footfall at the Museum and Visitor Information Centre was 11,000 against a target of 19. And again, there has been, compared to this time last year, we're 2,000 visits down, so that is an area where we need to look a bit further. And I've already mentioned the number of children taking part in formal educational activities, and that come up earlier in the agenda tonight. The other area is footfall in the High Street, which has actually exceeded its target, which is really positive. And I'm happy to take any questions you have, such as I can answer, if anyone's got any.
Thank you, Angela. Do we have questions, members? This might be quick. Just to remind you, it is Q3 report, so there's plenty more to come in the future, but if you've got no concerns... Oh, sorry. Councillor Ells.
Thank you, Chairman. It's only a quick one. The footfall at the museum, chatting to the ladies in the cafe the other night, they're saying that yeah, I know, it's not very scientific, but they are saying the Graham Clark exhibition is bringing in quite a lot of people. It won't compete with Lego, but it does seem to be helping. The other thing I wasn't sure about is you've got 11,484 is the performance. It's 8,000 down on the target, and it says it will be gone off. Sorry, it says target will be slightly missed. It seems a little more than slightly to me, but perhaps I'm reading something wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, that refers to across the whole year. So if you look at performance across, I think you're right. I think we're going to be, we probably aren't going to hit it. So that's where we generated the report. So yeah, I think that needs to be amended to show the target will be missed, because it's unlikely, unless there's a big blockbuster exhibition planned for later in the year, that we're going to hit the target. So you're right. So we can amend that so that shows more clearly. And I'm sure Victoria will probably be happy to comment on the current footfall and exhibitions.
Sorry, before we pass to Victoria, can I just ask a question you may not be able to answer? Where does your target come from as well?
Oh, there we go. That's better. Sorry about that. Actually, I will have to check that because the target was set before I was in post. So I'm actually working to existing targets. Judging from last year, not unreasonable ones. Yes, just if I should quickly then, obviously this has been a disappointing quarter. As we say, it is a quiet quarter. This time last year we had a puppetry exhibition, which was a much more family-friendly exhibition, which actually drew in, again, I think on the back of Lego perhaps, a surprisingly high figure for that time of year. Obviously that doesn't explain why we're so far below targets. All I will say is that we have coming on stream in the short to mid-future a whole new gallery with the work that's been going on about ancient civilizations and our Egyptians, improvements to our visitor information point, which some of you will know as the old reception desk at the museum, looking at actually attracting people and dealing with those people in the visitor information area in person and providing a much better service and a service that many more people will be aware of and visit. And we also have a review of events going on to try and introduce new events that will attract a broader and larger audience. For example, we're looking at heritage fairs and inviting other groups to come and join us to put on events that members of the public might enjoy. The other thing, and I'm sorry I labour this point every time, but we haven't yet had a full year of Monday closing.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Councillor Daly.
Well, Chairman, it's joy, I think, to see some of the figures that are in these reports, because it shows that, in fact, the museum itself, with the variety, the wide variety that it can offer, does fluctuate. Of course, it must do. but it's in a very sensitive part of the town. Let's face it, it's in St Faith Street, which is being very much affected by the roadworks in the centre of the town, particularly the gyratory system, the last 4, 5, 6 months actually. And that must have a great deal of negative approach to the museum itself. I think that some of the things which have been put on the museum have been quite stunning, actually. Imaginative, and it's all a question, really, I think, of how we are able to advertise what we do. We depend an awful lot on websites, don't we? And we're very sensitive, I suspect, for spending money in the press and press releases and things like that. But we do have some things which from time to time stir the imagination. And one of the things that we've had fairly recently is the if you like, the inspection on a closer and inner way of our dear old mummy, which we always thought was one thing and now we know is something else. And I think that that has actually instilled quite a lot of interest. I've been to 1 or 2 areas where people have made seminar kind of expositions on the Egyptian collection, which is quite itself stunning. We've got so much within Maidstone Museum. The South Seas exhibitions, for example, which are quite, well, they are unique, of course, but they don't perhaps exist in other places. So we've got so much to offer. The Japanese collection is now stunning because the Japanese lost an awful lot in the Fukushima nuclear thing and then also the tsunami there. They lost an awful lot of their ceramics. That makes ours much more important. And I think we ought to be, pushing that a lot more, actually. A lot of Japanese people come to this country, and they go to London, an awful lot of them. They probably never heard of Maidstone, probably couldn't actually pronounce it. But they ought to know it's here. And we did make some very good connections with the Japanese embassy 3 or 4 years ago. And that should be maintained because it is, of itself, something which we can offer. The Japanese, they're very, very proud of their heritage, as you well know. And we've got a lot of it here. And anybody that's been to see, in the last fortnight, the opening of the exhibition by our local artist, Graham Clark, again, it's a stunning exhibition of one man's work. And I think we should be making a lot more of that. I expect to see some of these figures bounce. And I mean bounce up, not bounce down. So I think, let's be positive about this. It's got a lot in it. The museum has got so much to offer. And its position in the town, I think, is established beyond doubt. And there was no way in which we can stop its progress, except by all the things we do round it, which are not within our control. So I like to see this report and the way it's presented. It does show a great deal being done, and I think a great deal of potential there still to be done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. In your eloquence on the museum, there's to be a fee coming from Victoria for that fairly shortly. Sorry, I'm joking. There's no budget, sorry. Members, if there's no more speakers, I intend to take items on this report 1, 2 and 3 together, unless anybody has any other reason we shouldn't. Do you need me to read them out? I will, for record. To note the summary of performance for quarter 3 of 2016-17 for key performance indicators, KPIs, and corporate strategies and plans. 2, note where complete data is not currently available. 3, identify any action that needs to be taken or amendments to the quarter 3 report. Put that. Do I have a second of that, please? Councillor Nagy, you were first. You were fast. Put that to the vote, members. All those in favour? No. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Thank you, members. We now come to probably the main event of the evening, Strategic Plan 2015-20, Update 2017-18. Angela Woodhouse will present these recommendations all on page 31. And I'll just re-explain what was discussed earlier so we're all aware how we're going to do this. We take amendments section by section, paragraph by paragraph for clarity. Officers will keep a note of the amendments displayed on the screen and will read out amended sentences so that we can take an informal straw poll along the way. This poll will not be recorded in the minutes. When we have a series of amendments that majority have agreed by an informal poll, we will then vote on all amendments together formally for the minutes. Sorry. So, as it says here, for ease, I would please ask that you put forward a spokesperson to raise group suggestions. So, can I ask the Liberal group for a spokesperson? Thank you, Councillor Lewins. And Councillor Earls, you'll be representing yourself. Thank you. And can I ask the Conservative group for a spokesperson? Is that you, Councillor Burton? Thank you very much. In that case, I'll... Oh, and can I just say I can't see a thing, so I'll just put a bit of pressure on Andrew. Can you please coordinate for us as we go forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So, the strategic plan sets out our priorities and was agreed in 2015. Policy and Resources earlier in September agreed that the plan be refreshed and not rewritten. The focus is on the we will section of each priority as you go through. The two priorities most relevant to this committee are on page 41, and they are respecting the character and heritage of our borough and ensuring there are good leisure and cultural attractions. So that is where you're being asked to focus for tonight. The other parts of the meeting, and I'll sort of update you on what the other committees have done. The committee has also been asked to consider how we measure the actions, so our performance indicators. The other three service committees have chosen to look at this once the plan has been agreed, so they haven't actually done it at this meeting. They said to put it on hold till they know exactly what's in the plan, and then each committee can go through and agree which indicators are most appropriate. So if you're happy to do the same, we'll bring a report back to you in March and you can go through that, and that fits with the strategic plan process. The process after tonight is your recommendations or amendments will go forward to Policy and Resources, who will meet in February, and they will look at all the recommendations coming forward and agree a plan to go to full council in March, just to make it clear. So, if you want to kick off, that's fine. So Anna's here to type up amendments as they come forward. So could I ask that the first, I think Councillor Lynch, you've indicated, did you want to put forward your suggestion and then we'll go from there?
Yep, great, okay. Hello, Anna. And all. Okay, under respecting the character and heritage of our borough, the first para, is there... I don't know if we'll be open to this. Yep. Where are we? In terms of its geography, Maidstone Borough is largely rural, and the countryside currently offers high-quality landscape and biodiversity. Full stop. Maidstone is the county town of Kent. And to leave that para as it is, just delete the rest that's in there. and then go on to we mean. Is that okay to keep going? Sure. Oh, hang on. Yep. I've just actually, after Maidstone is the county town of Kent, sorry, a focus on achieving economic prosperity, can't get it out, can't get my teeth in, recognises that protecting the environment, both built and natural, is essential in making this a great place to live, work and visit. Is that okay? Can I carry on? On that first para, yep. Here we go.
Councillor Lewin, just to take
Yeah,
your
oh, sorry, me again.
We finished.
Turn it off. Did you
Yeah.
say?
Yep, we finished. So I'll just try and move, yep.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you mind if I move down there for a minute, because I'm still struggling to read it? Is that...
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think anybody on this side of the town hall is going to disagree with anything that's put up there, but one thing I would say is this is a refresh and not a rewrite, and I think if we rewrite every paragraph, we're going to end up with something entirely different. So I don't think any of that's disagreeable, but we could be here for a very long time if we do this to every paragraph.
Fortunate we've only got the one page.
Right, straw poll, is that section agreed, members? Yes, thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, I don't think that was actually universally agreed. There was no indication from this side of the room that anyone did.
Yeah. Can we have a straw poll on that first paragraph, please, members? Are you agreed? If you please indicate. If you...
That's only 4.
I thought there were.
That was 5.
Just a refresh.
That was a 5, so that was...
Okay, that's agreed, members. Thank you. Councillor Lewins. Oh, no, you'll be after Councillor Lewins. Next bit, next section.
Hello. Right, going on to We Mean. Thriving and resilient urban and rural communities. And respecting, new line, respecting our heritage and natural environment. Maybe we could delete the rest. I'm not sure if the rest is relevant on there. I'm not sure.
So to clarify, you're suggesting we delete listening to our communities and devolving services where we can and working with Kent County Council to do the same, but keep the other two?
Correct.
Councillor Ells, on this section.
Thank you, Chairman. You broadly support that. I'm not sure why we want to, excuse me, why we want to delete listening to our communities. Why we want to delete listening to our communities. That the thriving and resilient urban and rural communities and the respecting our heritage and natural environment is fine. But the listening to our communities, I would have thought was quite important. And the devolving services isn't actually covered in anything else. So should that not still be in there? What I don't want to do is spend half the evening talking about 2 or 3 words.
Councillor Byrne, do you want to come in there?
Quite agree with Councillor Ells. I think certainly it's important that we still have listening to our communities in there as a fairly central message to what we should be doing, and also to delete something such as devolving services that isn't referenced out there is actually to signal a policy change, and we're not here to rewrite the strategic plan, we're here to make minor refreshments.
Thank you, members. We have a straw poll on deleting those 2 sentences then. Who's in favour? One at a time, sorry. We'll take one at a time then. The first one, which is, I can't... Listening to our communities. Those in favour of deleting. None. And
devolving services.
Devolving services where we can work with Kent County Council to do the same. Should
Those in favour of deleting?
those in favour of deleting? No? No one in favour, so it stays? Next section, back to Councillor Lewins.
Thank you. Okay, can we include somewhere about updating our biodiversity action plan? So we want to see that inserted somewhere under this same section. We will, or make another heading. Yeah, perhaps.
Biodiversity action plan.
And deliver our green and blue infrastructure strategy. Or blue and green even.
Councillor Ells?
Oh.
Thank you, Chairman. That's fine. The only part of that I don't like is work with our parishes and communities on the design of their communities. Could we not just put work with our parishes and communities? They're using communities twice in the same sentence, which to me is a bit clunky, but maybe not. That was it on that one. Thank you.
I'll bring Councillor Burton in on that one.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the element of working with parishes and communities on design is important. Having this thought myself earlier, maybe we could just change the word communities to neighbourhoods. It keeps the meaning of the sentence the same then. I would like to come back on the suggestion for the inclusion of the Biodiversity Action Plan and a green and blue infrastructure strategy. Bearing in mind that the strategic plan is the most high-level document that we write here at this council, and actually, I know I'm getting a little bit of deja vu here from having this conversation at Communities and Housing last week, but I think what we need to try and achieve here is something that avoids specific policy references. These are our overarching aims, and actually the green and blue infrastructure strategy forms a part of the local plan, which is already referenced in here, and the biodiversity action plan is a very specific piece of policy. So whilst I would broadly support those, I don't think they necessarily have a place in this document. So I'm going to propose a counter suggestion to that we don't have those two in there.
Before we vote on this, members, are there any more amendments to this section before we... Councillor Lewins.
I agree with Councillor Burton that it's already covered elsewhere, but I would like to add in about the 10-year parks and plan, open spaces, so maybe we could put in there, adopt and deliver our parks and open spaces 10-year plan.
Councillor Ailes, do you want to comment on that before I move over to...
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Burton on the putting the word neighbourhoods in instead of their communities. I think that's much better. I could not think of a word. I don't know why, but there you go. If the biodiversity action plan and the green and blue infrastructure is somewhere else, then yeah, I don't think we need to list it twice. I do think perhaps the parks and open spaces is a good idea. It could really go under either heading here, but I think it's a good idea to perhaps to put it in under the character and heritage. Thank you. No actual change, though.
Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to bang the same drum again and just say that to include the Parks and Open Spaces 10-year plan, again, is to get into the operational in what is a strategic document. We may well intend to do that during the period of this strategic plan, but this is not the place to write it. Otherwise, it would be a 100-page long document with all of the plans that we actually intend to put together in that time period. This is the highest level, most broad, overarching strategic document that sets out our objectives, our meaning, our raison d'etre as a council for the next period. It doesn't need to be involved in the operational level stuff. I mean, the inclusion of the local plan, I think, is probably merited. It's not in this section, but elsewhere, because it is, again, another broad, overarching document that actually includes, as we've already highlighted, some of these things. But I think to get into the nitty-gritty of putting in the Parks and Open Spaces 10-year plan isn't what this document is for.
Councillor Daly.
I hear what Councillor Burton said on this, but so far as parks and open spaces are concerned, it is one area actually where we do control what actually happens. That's not a lot left, is there really? And 10 years is a reasonable time frame for this, because the parks and open spaces are places which develop in a way in which people want them to be used, and it does change from time to time. But generally speaking, it's almost status quo. There's not a lot that happens there, but it is one of the only things that we can control and do. And if we do have a 10-year plan, then please, I would think that it's the best thing to say we will deliver it. So my argument would be to let it stay as it stands at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'll read out the changes so you can do your straw poll again. So the first change proposed is work with our parishes and communities on the design of their neighbourhoods.
Agreed.
The second was to add in update the biodiversity action plan.
No? Is that out? Thank you.
The next change was deliver our green and blue infrastructure strategy.
Agreed, members? Show of hands for that. In. We on deliver our... Yeah, the green and blue.
So that's 4. 5, 6.
6.
6 to keep it.
Say no.
And the last was adopt and deliver our parks and open spaces 10-year plan.
Those in favour?
So that's the majority.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. There isn't anywhere to put anything about monuments, ancient monuments, heritage buildings. I wondered whether that could come in somewhere as well. Is it? Oh.
Councillor Rouse.
Thank you,
Can you
Chairman.
assist?
With the monuments, we have got, it says respecting our heritage and natural environment. I think we left that in, didn't we? Because it comes under respecting our heritage, I would have thought in general terms anyway. Thank you.
And Councillor, we're trying to realise where replace goes in the actual setting.
Councillor Lewin, if you wanted to add in something about monuments, this would be the appropriate section, which is respecting the character and heritage of our borough. I'm not aware of any documents other than, in terms of strategies and plans that have come up before. There is a heritage topic paper in the local that supports the local plan, and I know a historic environment policy is also being developed following the inspection. So maybe it's being dealt with elsewhere.
Do you think we ought to include buildings, ancient monuments and buildings, to be on the safe side, so that it covers it, or, you know, to put it within that, maybe to put in the we mean, where it says respecting our heritage and natural environment, and then add something in there, maybe?
Sorry, Councillor, I would like to come
That's okay. Just a suggestion. Could we put respecting our heritage, history and natural environment? Under we mean, where it says respecting our heritage and natural environment, because I think that's in the right section. If we put respecting our heritage, history and natural environment, that covers a multitude of sins, doesn't it? I think if we start going down buildings, monuments, I don't know where we'll actually stop. That's my worry with that.
Sorry, yeah, no, please. I was letting you control a bit so that where we are. We agree with those amendments, members. Where we are. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you.
Just 1 minute, Anna. On the first line of the first section that we amended, it says it, and it should say is largely rural. Sorry, I just saw that. Yeah.
Yes. Your turn, Councillor Lewin.
Thank you. Okay, on to leisure and cultural attractions. Okay. Under we mean... Hang on, I'll go back, retract, sorry. Can I read it as I've got it here? Is that okay? There is always something to see or do in Maidstone Borough with its quality parks and open spaces, rivers, because we've got the Len, haven't we, both? We've got both. Several museums, I think, there, because we've got more than 2, haven't we? Oh, well... Okay.
There's 2 several, not sure.
It depends if you... museums, opportunities for sporting and leisure pursuits, historic buildings and monuments, markets and a variety of festivals and events held throughout the year. That's it on that one. Sorry.
Councillor Earls.
Thank you. We seem to have ended up with several museums. I thought we only had 2, but I know we have kind of museums within the museums, but saying several, I think people would turn up expecting 6 or 7. The last part actually was written more or less how I was going to suggest it, which is tying up the festivals and events throughout the year. So I'm quite happy with that. It's just the number of museums I was querying.
Councillor Burton, no. Sorry, University Challenge, no conferring. Do you wish to? Sorry, do you want to come in on that? Thank you.
Only to say that if all we're doing here is updating factually the number of things that we have in Maidstone, then fantastic, it has our support. But it's a lot of time spent over not a lot, but.
I was going to suggest actually we had a thing about several museums, just take out several and just leave it just museums. Councillor Fort, are you being referred to by...
The only thing I would say, the biggest attraction in the borough is the castle, and that seems to have come out.
Are you happy with historic buildings? If we otherwise we'd be going down which sort of historics and castles come... Sorry. I get your point, but historic buildings covers, I think. No more comments on that section? We'll have a straw poll on whether we agree the amendments.
Sorry, I'd like to just put forward something counter to that, that actually we keep it as is. We're getting into the realms of rewriting a document unnecessarily. It just seems a bit daft. It's, you know, this is a refresh, not a rewrite. Otherwise, there would have been a whole process of workshops with committees and so on and so forth. We're not writing a strategy document here. We're minor amending and updating it to make it relevant to now, and so I'm not supporting what's up here.
Okay, members, we vote what we got on the screen first. Those agreeing with what's on the screen, present? For voting for what's there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6. That's majority.
We've got 3 of it. Councillor Daly, do you wish to...
Chairman, I hesitate. I don't want to prolong this any further than needs to be, but I've been trying very hard to find any mention of musical culture anywhere in this document. Maidstone has one of the best community symphony orchestras in the country, and it also has one of the best wind symphony orchestras in the country, and neither of them are mentioned anywhere in here. We also have a choral union, which you may have heard of, that's been around for about 114 years. So, I mean, there's no mention of musical culture in Maidstone at all. But it exists here in spades.
I get the point, Councillor Daly, but wouldn't the festivals, events, leisure pursuits, you wouldn't say it comes under... You would like to hear a word like of culture, yes. Well, we have cultural attractions, I do believe. somewhere. Councillor Daly, can you propose a sentence that could fit?
Well, it is a proposal. I mean, I'd just like to see it in some way acknowledged by the Borough Council that they do have those talents within the borough environment. I mean, you know, I know we have nothing to do with it. We don't input anything into it. We don't give them any money. We don't do anything for them, but we could actually advertise the fact that we acknowledge them.
I quite agree with you, Councillor Daly. Have you got a form of words to we just crystallise in, just to capture what you're saying to us?
I've got an idea.
Yeah, well, there is room for it, Chairman. At the end of the sentence there, we mean Maidstone has leisure and cultural offers which attract visitors and meet the needs of our residents. Including the very fine musical events provided by Maidstone Symphony Orchestra and the Maidstone Wind Symphony Orchestra.
I don't think we can quite go down that road, but I think if we fitted music in somewhere, a variety of music, and have you done it?
Etc. is excellent, but it's not the only music in Maidstone.
Annie, do you want to come in now on what you've changed?
Yeah, so I've just made a small amendment up there and changed it to, based upon the various things I heard, opportunities for sporting, leisure, musical and cultural pursuits.
Okay, members, we have a poll on that section, please. All those in favour?
Yeah,
Majority, thank you. We mean...
Thank you. We mean... Just put the word sport in. So where we have... Maidstone has sport, leisure and cultural offers, blah, blah, blah. So it's just literally inserting the word sport.
Can we have Maidstone offers sport, leisure?
Yeah? Maidstone offers sport, leisure and cultural.
And attracts visitors. That meets the needs of our residents. I like that bit.
Could you repeat
Oh, it doesn't
that?
make sense now.
No, Maidstone.
Councillor Nagy, if you wish to speak, could you put your mic... Sorry, could you put your mic on? Thank you. We can't hear you over.
Could we take that offer out where it's bleeping now? Take that back. Delete that one. So Maidstone offers a great range of sport, leisure and culture which attracts visitors and meets the needs of our residents. That's a great one, that one. Does that sound good?
Councillor Ells, you wish to come in on this one? Oh.
Yes, I think I was trying to say almost the same thing, but I've now got in a bit of a muddle of what it says up there. Maidstone offers a great range of sport, leisure and culture which attracts visitors and meets the needs of our residents.
Yeah.
Can I come in there and suggest we do residents and then visitors, because residents are more in... Sorry. I think residents should come before visitors. Anything else, Councillor Earls, before I move over to Councillor Burton?
No particular disagreement, Chairman, but at least we're going to be well versed when we do have to write this afresh completely in a few years' time.
Thank you very much for that. Can we then vote on that section? We mean...
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You in favour, Councillor Earls? Or you? Yeah.
Yep, there's a majority.
Lewins, we will, won't we?
Okay, thank you. We will deliver the destination management plan, deliver the festival and events strategy, maximise the benefits of our sports, leisure and cultural assets to support and enhance Maidstone's economic performance.
Councillor Earls?
I haven't quite caught up with that yet. Can you just bear with me a moment while I read this? Yes, stand even closer to the screen, because I'm still struggling.
I'll move to Councillor Burton while you're...
Thank you, Chairman. I do have something to say about this section, actually. I think with the exception of updating the first bullet point to deliver the, because that updates it chronologically as time has gone on, I think this section should remain the same. If we're going to include, adopt and deliver the Museum 20-year plan and deliver the programme of projects for a sustainable future for Moat Park, we're not just banding about empty words here, we're actually making policy commitments that have resources attached to them. We actually ought to be fairly careful with this, and what I do think is, I'll go back to my earlier point, this is a strategic document. So it's all well and good to set out the aims to say that yes, we support our parks and yes, we like to support our cultural assets. That's what this is for. But to say that we're going to adopt and deliver a museum plan and projects for Moat Park, I don't see how we can make that commitment here in this document. So I'd like it actually kept as it is with the exception of the change suggested to the first bullet point.
Councillor Earls, do you have...
Yeah, thank you. I think I agree with Councillor Burton that perhaps we don't need to put the adopt and deliver the mates. I mean, we know we're going to work towards the museum, and indeed it's covered in the heritage and culture, etc. But as Councillor Burton said, that's kind of committing us completely. The sustainable future for Moat Park. I'm losing myself slightly in the wording, unfortunately, but I think we've already pretty much covered the parks, open spaces, etc. But I'm happy with the other part, the top part.
So the first amendment, first bullet point is to change it to deliver the destination management plan, full stop. Next one is a new bullet point, maximise the benefits of our sports, leisure and cultural assets to support and enhance Maystone's economic performance.
It seems to say almost exactly what the bullet point that we're deleting 2 points below says. It just strikes me as another one of those things that we're changing quite needlessly.
Those in favour of that? Those in favour? Is that right? Or it was agreed?
So there's two options. You keep the original wording that's already been crossed through. Well, actually, it's three. You accept a deletion, or you add in a new. So I think Councillor Burton was making the point that the new bullet point actually is a variation on what was there previously. So it's whether you agree the new wording or to take it out completely or revert back, which is a bit complicated.
Councillor Daly.
Chair, I'd just like to ask a question. The item up there which is crossed out, adapt or adopt as it deliver, museum 20-year plan. That's crossed out, but the museum is very much a part of our heritage and much of our culture, and it's likely to stay for a long, long time. We are trustees of what the museum holds. We're not owners of the museum in that sense. We run it as trustees, and what's in the museum is forever, if you like, because even if we wanted to get rid of it, we'd only go to another museum. It couldn't go anywhere else. So I can't see why that item in there shouldn't be restored, because there's got to be a museum plan. Is it going to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? What difference does it make? I mean, to take it out means it doesn't exist.
Yeah, could you hold that with you, just while we...
The bullet point I was referring to as being deleted was the one underneath in red. So the red one that says maximise the benefits of our leisure and cultural assets through our commercialisation approach to maintain key services. That was a bullet point in our original strategic plan that's been deleted. So it's there showing track changes prior to coming to this committee. So it went to P&R and they agreed that deletion. You're now being asked, do you want to add in maximise the benefits of our sports, leisure and cultural assets to support and enhance Maystone's economic performance? So if we start with that.
Yes, Councillor Ailes. Are we going to go with that, or do you...
Yeah, so it does... That one does replace the one we've deleted, but I prefer the wording of the new one. That's the only comment.
One is deleted. Members, do you want to vote to use the new one or go back to the old, the one that's red that's crossed out?
If you vote for the new one. Yeah, vote for the new one. And we'll see.
Let's vote for the new one first.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
The next change put forward, so deliver the festival and event strategy, stays. The next change put forward was that adopt and deliver the museum 20-year plan be deleted, which is what Councillor Daly was speaking on.
Want to keep that in? Right, do you want to delete that or keep that 20-year plan for the...
Vote to delete.
Vote. Okay, we'll do... Vote for delete. Right, first vote for delete. Right, we're voting to delete, sorry if I could only read what I'm looking at, adopt and deliver the 20-year plan. We're voting to delete at present that item. Do we have a vote for deletion? Voting for delete at present. So that stays, members. Go on. No. Thank you, members. That was almost painless. I'm at this point. Sorry. Right, members, again, we have the final vote for the whole kit and caboodle. Sorry, members, let's move on. Let's vote for the whole... Are we... Can I... Yes. And I presume before this will come to the committee when it's formulated for us. Right.
Keeping in the bit on Moat Park or taking it out?
The 10-year plan, I think.
Down, under where you were. Go down. There we are. Deliver the programme of projects a sustainable future for Moat Park. I want that in.
Or is it somewhere else?
Even though that has resources.
Well, I want it in. I mean, you can vote against me, but I want it...
It belongs to Mason, so they have to.
Yeah. Fun.
Members, that last point, service delivered programme of projections a sustainable future of Moat Park. Now, can we have a vote for out first?
That's it. I'm on. I would like to see something about Moat Park in. If saying deliver the programme is too much of a commitment, rather than remove it, could we not say support a sustainable future for Moat Park?
Secure the future of Moat Park.
It doesn't quite read right, does it?
The amendment that's been put forward is support a sustainable future for Moat Park.
Does that make sense to you? We have a vote on that one? 4. I think that's virtually unanimous. Oh.
Yep.
I think I'm going to wrap up here now. We're going to go to the vote on the whole item as all amended, and we're all happy and agreed. Can I ask, please, that we, those in favour of this item schedule?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 in favour. Oh,
1. No abstentions.
can we take that again?
So, yeah. Sorry, we had to glitch members. We have to take that vote again. All those in favour of this item? In favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour.
I'm pleased to say that's passed, members. Thank you very much. Not far to go, members. We'll now move on to item 17, Medium-Term Financial Strategy and Budget Proposals 2017-18. Mark Green will present. Recommendations are on page 58. Yeah, page 58, members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report, first of all, recaps on the medium-term financial strategy that was set by Council back in September, and it goes on to talk about developments since then, and it includes an updated strategic revenue projection at Appendix A, which is on page 72. Now, since the Council approved the medium-term financial strategy, the main thing that's happened is that the local government finance settlement for next year has been announced. And this doesn't actually affect our revenue projections at all. The main thing that affected local government was that the amount of new homes bonus that we are due to receive will reduce. Now, this council has always set aside new homes bonus for capital expenditure, so there's no impact on revenue. It does mean that on our capital programme, we're going to have to borrow sooner than we had expected because we'll have less new homes bonus, but no impact so far as revenue is concerned. The only thing that I draw your attention to on Appendix A, the Strategic Revenue Projection, is that when Policy and Resources Committee looked at this, they asked this committee specifically to consider an item which is towards the bottom of that page 72, which is for 2 lots of £50,000 growth for the museum, so £100,000 in total. If you look at the columns 2017-18 and 2018-19, you'll see at the bottom there by museum it has 2 lots of 50. And it is unusual to have budget growth in the current environment, but this was something that Policy and Resources Committee discussed way back in December 2015, and the decision was taken then that the museum needed that extra money to sustain its programme of educational work and to have a balanced budget going forward. But as I say, that's something that Policy and Resources Committee at that meeting at the beginning of January asked you to consider whether that growth is still appropriate given what's happened since the original discussion in 2015. So, leaving that aside, the position that we're in at the moment, council-wide, is that, as shown in the strategic revenue projection, we've got a budget gap of £4 million at the end of the next 5 years. And budget proposals have been developed, which total 3.2 million. And the proposals that we're asking you to look at specifically this evening total 440,000, being the proposals that are relevant for this committee. And they're set out on page 73, Appendix B. So that's the first thing, really, for the committee to consider this evening. The next appendix includes the results of the budget consultation that took place at the end of last year, and it gives you an idea about residents' views on what services should have a priority. And it is pretty authoritative. There was a lot of work that went in, both publicising the survey, going out around the borough, carrying out roadshows, and because of the makeup of the response to the survey, it has a 95% confidence level in statistical terms. You don't need to have that many responses in numerical terms for it to have statistical validity. And I guess the main point about the budget consultation is that it shows, and you can see this on page 78, how residents rank the different services, and maybe not surprisingly, household waste collection and disposal comes out at the top. Sport and recreation, culture and tourism come at the bottom. And again, Policy and Resources Committee has asked that each service committee take these findings into account when considering the budget proposals. And the final thing that you're asked to consider in this report is Appendix D, which is the capital budget proposals. And in many ways, this is the most interesting bit of the budget, because it's how, by making decisions now, we can make a long-term difference to the community. And if you look at Appendix D, there are various capital budget proposals for services in this committee's remit, so improvements to play areas, the Moat Park Adventure Zone, improvements to parks, the Moat Park Visitor Centre, and a development plan for the museum. So all things that we're proposing to invest in over the next 5 years. That's right at the back, page 102. So, to sum up then, members, we've got a broadly balanced position budget-wise for 17-18, assuming that committees agree all the proposals that are being put forward. Each service committee is being asked to consider the budget proposals, and any views that you put forward, any amendments that you wish to make, will go to Policy and Resources Committee on the 15th of February, and Policy and Resources Committee is responsible for coming up with final budget proposals that will then go to Council on 1st of March, when Council determines the budget for 17-18 and sets the Council tax. So you're asked, members, to agree the budget proposals, specifically revenue proposals in Appendix B, capital proposals in Appendix D, as per the recommendation on page 58. And obviously I'm very happy to take any questions on the detail of the budget proposals that you've got in front of you. Thank you.
Obviously a weighty subject, members. Do I have questions, please, for Mr. Green? Councillor Ells.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple. One may purely be misunderstanding. Just the two amounts of the 250s for the museum. Are you saying that Policy and Resources would prefer us not to spend that? That is the first. Shall I make the second point? It's all right, yeah, I'll do the other. The other one is, it's more of a general thing. I agree on saving money on the Christmas light provision and think the businesses that are benefiting should actually be contributing towards the lights. I just wondered, though, the withdrawal of Christmas lights provision, is that totally down to zero in one hit? Because if we get to the end of November and none of the businesses in the high street have put their hands in their pockets, does that mean we will be the only town with no Christmas lights? Just wondered.
Okay. Your first question, Councillor Earl, is about the growth for the museum. Policy and Resources Committee didn't form a view because it's really a matter for this committee to consider. They simply asked that you look at that growth item and the benefits that it would provide in terms of the educational service that the museum provides and whether it's justified. So it's down to this committee to express a view as to whether it is happy that that budget growth should remain in the budget. So that was really what you were being asked to do. Under Christmas lights, that is withdrawing the budget altogether. It's not an item for next year, for 17-18. If you look at the phasing, it's for 2019-20. And the idea of that is that that gives plenty of time for businesses, anybody else who's interested in providing Christmas lights, to look at funding sources. So it's not something that will happen in 2017, but it's a longer-term plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fawkes, did you want to come in there? No.
Questions, Councillor Earls.
It's just a little unfortunately, we've lost Victoria from the museum and obviously Laura, who could have answered some of these questions. I'm not saying that, but they have gone. Because I've got one, obviously, on the 50,000 growth projection from the museum and what effect it would have on their programme and their service. But unfortunately, they're not here to answer that question.
There's two bits to it. One is withdrawing the educational service that the museum provides, and I understand there's one member of staff who provides that, so that member of staff would have to be made redundant. And then that's not the whole 100,000, it's also supporting the revenue budget of the museum in total, so they would have to make probably one further redundancy and reduce the level of service, maybe by closing for an extra day a week. That I'm told that would be the implication for the museum of withdrawing that budget growth. I should maybe add that you might think, well, they're doing those things anyway, so why is that growth? Well, the reason is that they're currently getting grant funding to support those things, and that they don't expect to have that grant funding in the future. So basically, we would be replacing the grant funding and providing the funding ourselves.
I was informed just removing this growth projection now-ish could mean that their 20-year plan they would have to go back to the drawing board in some cases. So I'm just saying that it could cause some pain, shall we say, on the future plan. But Councillor Nagy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Perhaps we should have took this first when all the officers were here, because obviously I suppose a lot of councillors will not know what actually this money will go on, but it does seem to be wages and just keeping it going like it is. Otherwise, if we don't have this money, things will suffer and everything will suffer at the museum, basically.
Councillor Burton.
I'm going to make a brief apology first, because it is going to seem like I'm just rebelling against everything for the sake of it tonight. I promise you I'm not. I'm a rebel with a cause. I struggle with this section of the budget proposal, bearing in mind what we've been reminded by Mark this evening about the budget consultation which we are asked to consider, We don't do that for no reason. We go out and ask people what their priorities may be. I'm sorry to say it, particularly as a sub to this committee, but heritage and culture ranked lowest in the things people want to see us putting our budget towards, and yet this committee is being asked to make the lowest budget cuts of any of the service committees, I think I'm quite right in saying, and actually we're committing additional money to the museum. I'm frankly quite uncomfortable with it. Now, as a late addition to the committee for this evening, I'm not going to vote against it, but I shall be abstaining, and the reason I'm not going to vote against it is because I can't actually reasonably put on the table an alternative because of my late arrival to this. But I would urge other committee members to give some consideration to that. We're putting more money towards something which was actually bottom of the list behind the collection of bins, etc., what people actually want in the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I'll just make a comment from the chair here at the moment that heritage, culture and leisure, I think a lot of, well, we forget, other people forget, residents forget, that it is a generator for the town and it does bring income in. We're not just sitting here leisurely and we have in the museum, for instance, a jewel in the crown. So all I'm just reminding people is that we do generate income for the borough. We're not just here just to support statues and paintings, if you get my drift. Councillor Revel.
Well, I think the wording was expecting a cutting grant, but we don't know there is going to be a cutting grant. And what is the you're expecting, but is this going to happen or not? So it may be, we may be a little bit, if we vote for the 50 and then we get the grant, well, we've sort of given money away unnecessarily.
We've no indication that there will be grant funding in 17-18 at the moment.
From the chair, I'm to that opinion that we still have some time before we can make that final decision. And why not?
Can we just take the first 50 out? That is for the year 17-18.
Sorry, Councillor, could you just give us a form of words again for that so we can encapsulate it?
Anyway, you heard it anyway, so... Yes. I'm proposing that we...
Do you have a seconder for that, Councillor Revel? Councillor Daly.
Only to say, Chairman, I think that, bearing in mind I'm probably listened to in Singapore at the moment, there's a danger, you know, in asking the public anything. I think Mr. Cameron might agree with that. But we are here to make decisions because that's what we are supposed to be about. And we spend a lot of time tonight talking about a strategic plan for the, which contains a great deal of esoterics in the sense of things like culture and open spaces and green and blue this and birds and bees and a whole raft of different things, which Joe Public, if they're listening to this tonight, and good luck, would not really vote for, because they're only interested, as you're quite right, Mr. Burton, bins, and particularly drains and other interesting things like street lights, which have nothing to do with us, of course. But if we don't actually support what has been put in front of us by officers who spent a great deal of time working out how we shall deal with our budget for the next year, then I think we'd be foolish, because we've just spent a lot of time deciding that we will support 10-year strategies for this, 20-year strategies for that, and some of those, as I say, are quite esoteric. But people will make up their own minds, and you're going to have to face the electorate at some stage, but not this year. So all I'm saying is really, I think it's about time we just decided to call it a day and to accept the officer's report and to allow it to go forward eventually back to PNR, and we'll get another bite of this cherry in council. So my personal feeling is I would like to vote for what's on the papers tonight and move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Nagy. Members, we can go to the vote on this. Do you want me to read out the item, or are you happy? I will read it out. Agrees that the budget proposals for services within the remit of this committee as set out in appendices B and D for submission to Policy and Resources Committee. Can I have vote in favour?
5 in favour.
Against? Abstentions? Councillor, I don't think, have we voted, Councillor Revel? You're abstaining, 4 abstentions.
4 abstentions.
So
Okay, that's passed.
That's
5 in favour.
That's passed, 5 in favour, 4 abstentions. Thank you, members. And at this stage of the game, I think, unless there's no other business, I would like to thank you for your patience and fortitude. And I'd like to special thank you to Angela for her presentation. I know she's working very hard on the strategy. And Poppy, will we see you again?
No, it's my last one.
We won't see Poppy. It's her last night tonight, so it's not good. I don't hope it's not goodbye forever, but she's going somewhere to do something. And yeah, sorry. but thank you, Poppy, for your services. Thank you, members.